26, December the 11th. I just had a birthday. I'm 85 if you don't want to do the math.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
So, what was your favorite thing to do when you were a kid?
Play basketball.
What were some of the ways to just hang out when you were 11 years old?
Well, we had the communal building there, which was a Jewish settlement house. It was on Kansas and Meridian Street. Kansas is 1 block south of Morris Street, where Shapiro's is. It's about 2 blocks from there. That was the gathering place for the Jewish community on the south side then.
Okay. What was the economy like when you were 11 years old?
It was, when I was 11, it was just coming out of the Depression. Roosevelt was president of the United States then, and there was a second recession in 1937, and the standard of living was not so high. My family did have a car, and we did sleep 6 in 1 bedroom at that particular time, right there. And it was a little bit rough. It was a little bit rough then, but still a great country, and we always had enough to eat, and there was enough fuel, you know, to keep the house warm and all. But it wasn't easy.
Okay. You said you had 6 in a bedroom, so how big was your house, really?
3 rooms. 3 rooms. My mother had lost it right after there. She had a mortgage on it and couldn't keep it up, and it went back to the bank.
So, how much were things like bread or milk or like candy when you went to the grocery store?
Well, I remember coffee. She sent me to the store. There was 3 pounds of coffee for 39 cents at the AMP. That was it. Eggs have not gone up that much. A loaf of bread was about a dime, but we always managed to buy a bread. My mother would send me to the store and would say, "Given a nechten." That means nechten is yesterday. I didn't know until I grew up in Yiddish that nechten wasn't a loaf of bread. It was yesterday.
Old stale loaf.
Yeah, well, it wasn't stale. It was right there. You bought a big loaf of rye bread for a dime, nechten, of course, and this was it. But we managed it. We managed out right there. You didn't get tomatoes in the middle of winter. There was no such thing as fresh fruit then. I mean, but you look around today and you see what it is. You go in the grocery store, you see tomatoes, lettuce, and that sort of thing right there. This didn't happen. You had potatoes and the root crops there, and that was it. Go ahead.
Okay. Did both your parents work?
No. Let me go on to that first. Let me explain that to you. I'm 85 years old, and I'll tell you the biggest revolution that I've seen in my lifetime was a social revolution. Is the fact that it takes 2 incomes to support a standard of living today. Women did not work. They stayed home and they raised children. There was no such thing. There was one breadwinner right there. And as far as I see it from this point of view, the society is paying a heck of a price for that. I mean, this to me, from what I've seen, is the biggest revolution that's happened to me in the lifetime in the country. But go on with your next question.
So how many siblings did you have?
I'm sorry?
How many siblings did you
Well, there were 7 children. But at that particular time in the 30s, my youngest brother was not born. My mother was in her 40s when she gave birth to the last child. I'll go into that a little bit longer. That's an interesting thing in itself. Go ahead.
Are most families like big like yours?
Was what?
Most families big like yours?
Some were. The Sephardic families were, but at that particular time, the birth rate children was, no, we were more or less exceptions. There were 3, 4 kids, 2 kids sometimes, but 7, 8, 9, 10. No, that wasn't the norm.
Okay. What was school like for you?
School was easy for me. I was a good student. I was a good student.
Okay, answer my next question. What was your favorite and least favorite subject?
Least favorite subject? Gym. You know, there's a lot of gymnastics, and the favorite subjects was the academic ones, the history and the math.
Did you enjoy going to school? Did you like it?
Yeah, when I wasn't beat up on some of the kids, you know, bullying was a common thing right there. You know, they're making a big thing. But some of the times you had to go with a group. I mean, you fought your way in and fought your way out. That was the thing. There was a vein of anti-Semitism there. I mean, on the South Side, it toughened you up. Believe me. Go ahead. I don't want to go into that.
Okay. What sports did you like?
What's what?
What sports did you like?
I like basketball and I like football best of all. I was going to play football, but I got beat up a couple of times and that put an end to my football career. It was too rough.
Did you have many chores?
Toys?
Chores. Like at home, like cleaning the house or...
Oh, yeah, well, I helped my mother out, certainly, right there. Yeah, you had to do your things.
Did you choose to go to the war, World War II?
Do I get into that? I don't know.
You can talk about this later, right now you can talk
No, I
about
can tell you about that. I'll go in about that. My mother was 8 months pregnant. This is going into November of 1943. We got a letter from the War Department where my brother had been wounded the first time at the assault on Mount Casino, and he was sent to the hospital. And my mother was ready to give birth, I think, 3 weeks later. And after that, I got a letter from my brother, and he says, whatever you could do, you got to stay out of the Army. Try and stay out of the Army. Stay in school. Well, at that particular time, if you were 17 and you had a letter or a sign-off from your parents, they would let you in. At 18, no way. They drafted you. You had to wait for the draft. So he says, you got to stay out of the Army some way or another. So, like I told you, I was a good student. I was at Purdue University. My first year I was 16 years old. And I prevailed on my mother, and she would have none of it. My brother was in with the letter, wounded. My oldest brother had just drafted and got in. And this is, I'm trying to think. This is already February or March, and I says, Mom, I says, I don't want to wait any longer. So I went down and I enlisted in May of 1944. Now the enlistment office was at the Federal Building downtown on Ohio Street and all. I got up there and I got sworn in, and as I was coming out, I ran into my chemistry partner, who was a refugee kid from Germany. In 1938 he came. And he says, you're crazy. What do you want to go in? The war's going to be over with pretty soon. I says, well, I can't wait anymore. So the wind up of the story is that I didn't want to tell you. He waited, he was drafted, and he was killed on Okinawa. That's what you call fate. That was fate. Who knew that was going to happen? Okinawa was no picnic, believe me. But that's the story I wanted to tell you right there. I didn't, still remember it. Go ahead.
So when you were drafted, like,
No, I wasn't drafted.
well, I mean not drafted,
When I enlisted, yeah.
what were your feelings when you were scared when you first entered your ship?
Well, you didn't know any better. The only time I got scared is when I was overseas and getting shelled. That scares you pretty good. But please, let's not go into that at this particular point. I mean, you kids don't want to know about that. That's the only thing I can tell you. This war is, I don't know if you know what an obscenity is, but it's the worst. It's the worst thing that a human being can engage in. No question about it. Go ahead.
So what's your favorite color?
Really, the color of money.
All right, that's all.
Come on, you can do better than that. why don't you ask me what I want to be when I grow up?
What do you want to be when you grow
I
up?
don't know, I think I'm already grown up. All right, anything else, kids? I mean, you want me to tell you about Indianapolis at that time and the family?
Yeah.
I was prepared to tell you about that. My parents were married in Indianapolis at the communal building that I said. My father came here as a 6-year-old, and my mother was, I think, 12 or 13 when she came from London, England. She was born in Poland, and they went in to live in London. And my mother's father came here in 1913. Now that's an interesting story in itself that I'd like to go into. He was Yiddish speaking, they didn't know anything else, and they went through Ellis Island right there, and a fellow was standing there speaking Yiddish. He says, "Anybody need a job?" You know, in Yiddish. He says, he had about 4 or 5 or 6 of them raised their hand. He says, "Come with me." So he followed this guy, and he went down to the New York Central terminal. They put him on a train. Didn't know where he was going. Well, at that time, this is in April or May of 1913, there was a big flood in Indianapolis, and they needed people to fill sandbags and stop the flood. So the labor they got, they had the recruiters there. A day and a night he wrote there, and they left him out, and then he said, "Come with me," and they gave him a shovel and bags, and they filled up. So after the flood subsided 2 weeks later, what are they going to do? Well, the guy comes around, and they had then what they call the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, still at the communal building. And he said, "Well, what do you do?" And he says he was a shoemaker, a cobbler. And he had a few tools, so what they did, they gave him $50. They lent him $50 to open up a place. And he's by himself there. Now, where did he open up at? 17th and Senate, where the Methodist Hospital is right there. There were 2 rooms. He had his shoe shop in the front, and he slept in the back. And he ate in the taverns where they had free lunch. Even for a nickel, the breweries would put out some kind of a spread, and he saved his money, and he saved enough to send for his family that was in London. Now that's a funny story, and that's how that part of the family got here. So on my father's side, I think his mother was widowed, and they came to the States, and that side of the family were tailors. And they worked at the Kahn Tailoring Company, which was owned by the German Jewish family there. I don't think it's in business anymore. And all they went there, they had jobs because they were skilled craftsmen. See, at Europe at that time, they had an apprenticeship deal. You didn't have schools as beautiful as this. You learned the history deal. They apprenticed you to a tradesman, a cobbler, a shoemaker, a butcher, or a baker, and whatever. That's the educational system. First of all, in Europe, especially Jews, they wouldn't let you own property. They had the pale of the settlement. What was open to them was the trades. And that was it. If you wanted to be a doctor, forget it. Germany, you could be a doctor, I think you could send over there, but a Jew in the pale, not a chance. Well, go on.
Well, so what did you do for like a job? When did you get your first job?
Oh, I was light about my age. I was 14 years old, and I was big, and I went to sell shoes on Washington Street, Feltman and Kern, right there. And I think I made $4 that first day. And lunch was at the city market, which was around the corner from there, and you could buy a bottle of pop and 4 hot dogs for, I think, 50 cents at that point.
Oh, good deal.
Yeah, it was good training.
Yeah. Did you travel a lot did you go anywhere? Like,
What?
did you travel?
They stayed home. They didn't have the money to travel. We went to the Big Eagle camp at that particular point, which is in Zionsville, and that's all the traveling I did. No, There was no traveling then. We had relatives in Detroit, and I think in the middle 30s, my father had a car, and we drove up to Detroit, and I think it took 10 hours or something like that to go to Detroit. No interstates then, but no traveling. Okay, what else? Come on, kids, give me some questions. Go ahead.
What rank were you in the Navy?
I'm sorry?
What rank were you?
I can't hear.
What
What
rank?
rank?
Oh, I was a seaman first class.
So, what does that mean?
I was a seaman first class. No, I was in, my boot camp was at, it was a CD boot camp. It was construction battalions right there. That was in Williamsburg, Virginia, about 26 miles from Norfolk. And that was because I was from Purdue, which is an engineering school, and they sent me there to that. But they didn't make me a CB. They made me an amphibious sailor. I was on an LST. Go ahead, what is it?
Like,
What?
I wonder if there are like any stores that were like just opening up when you were a kid and that are like really big now. Like if if you saw like Walmart as like a little shop back then.
No, they were what they called mom and pop stores. That were very few chains. You had here, you had A&P, of course. You had Kroger, and the Standard Grocery, which is out of business now. There was not this big mass merchandising chains. Go ahead.
Were stuff back then really, really cheap than today?
I'm sorry?
Were stuff back then cheap than today?
Well, what do you want to call cheap? Everything is relative here. I mean, it's how many
Cars.
hours you had to work to buy a loaf of bread or a dozen eggs or something like that.
Cars?
Well, a car you could buy in the 20s, you could buy a Chevrolet for about $350 new. And I think a Cadillac, if it were real fancy, was $1,400. But you got to understand, a man would only make $8 a week, $10 a week, and $50 a week. You were a rich man. So that's why I say it's relative of what it was. See, cheap is, how long does it take you to earn $1? See, that's the true measure of what cheap is. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
What was your favorite food? Like, what was your hobby?
Hobby was sports, and the Boy Scouts did. We were very active in the Boy Scouts right there, and that was about it. You didn't have much time if you were serious students. You studied. You wanted to get ahead because they taught us for the ticket out of poverty, or so to speak, was education. That was the number one. In a Jewish family at that particular time, the first thing is that make sure that there was food on the table and there was a roof over your head. And the second thing, education. Education was the most important thing. And of course, I forgot to mention, you had to take care of the health. The health came first. See, then you had education was paramount. And still is to a certain extent. Yeah, go ahead.
When you were in the Navy, what was your battle station?
I was a loader on a 40-millimeter anti-aircraft, and also I was on the 20-millimeter anti-aircraft gun. And the most important thing, I was a crewman on an LCVP. We carried 6 of those. That's you've seen them where they have the bow open and the troops run out. We carried 36 troops on that LCVP, and we had the front where you had to let the bow thing down, and then also in the back you had 230 caliber machine guns on the sides, which were like pea shooters at that particular point. But that was it. Yes, go ahead.
How much was it to travel?
How much was it to what?
To travel, like, from one place to another?
Well, I don't know, a bus ticket, I think, to Louisville was about $1.25, something like that. Who knows, I didn't travel.
Kevin had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Where do you fight in the war?
Italy,
Okay.
Italy.
So did you have a chance to liberate?
Well, let me tell you where I was on VE Day. That was May the 8th. We were underway. We were going back to Italy. We had been in North Africa training because we didn't know if we were going to be needed or not. But the big thing came after the armistice right there. The ship went up to Trieste. We thought this is summer of '45, before the Japanese surrendered. We were sent to Trieste. Yugoslavia and was fighting over the possession of Trieste right there, and they settled that thing in 1951. But it was touch and go there. You know, that was the beginnings of the Cold War right there. But that's all we've known. The damn war after another. It's the only thing. I'll sum it up to you. Two things as I remember it, recall it, and look at it philosophically. I'll define the experience that I had in my lifetime in two sentences. The first one is life expectancy. Life expectancy at the turn of the 19th and 20th century was 47 years. 47 years is what an American male would do from the 19th to the 20th century. At that point, by the end of the 20th century, the life expectancy was 74 years. The integers have just changed. And the second thing that I recall, I'll sum the whole thing up. Too much war. It's all my generation has known, is one darn war after another. You know. And then, of course, the seminal event of everything is I lived through Hitler. Now, for a Jew, that was something. I still think and sweat that how close he came to winning this thing. I mean, it was a touch and go, especially in '42. That's when they were at their peak. But I wasn't supposed to go into that right there. But those are the two things, as I see it, that I can define. Life expectancy and too much war. And everything else you can interpret from that.
You can go into that. That's what we're studying.
Right.
Yeah?
Yes.
I would like you to talk. Yeah,
Yes.
that's exactly what we want to hear. What you knew about that when you lived in Indianapolis, probably what was going on.
And also, I'll tell you something, which is a terrific thing, is the anti-Semitism has been buried in this country. I mean, it's gone. It's sub rosa, but we have 3 Supreme Court justices. I think we've got 10 senators that are Jewish, and I think we have 40 in the Congress, in the House of Representatives right there. I don't know how many governors we have right there. I don't know if I used to keep on that. I don't know the Jewish governors anymore. But this is it, and then also the contribution of the Jews in the United States has been monumental. I mean, it's the contribution of the American Jew has been, you can't quantify it, it's been so great. So that's the thing that I'm most proud of right there.
I'm going to ask a question. So how did the Jews in Indianapolis, did they talk about what was happening in Europe during the Holocaust?
I'm glad you brought that up. Do you understand Yiddish? You don't understand. HHAI. That means don't rock the boat. They were unsure of their position as citizens. They equated it to what they knew in Russia, the pogroms, the anti-Semitism, and everything like that. The deal was, do not rock the boat. That was it. Here, 10 miles from where we're sitting right now in Noblesville, they had the Silver Shirts, a Nazi fascist organization, and you just didn't want to rock the boat. They could have done more, I think. Of course, that not only in Indianapolis, but that was the whole situation of the Jew in the United States. Now, the worst part of the whole thing is I can see it right now. When the United States went into World War II, we had 135 million citizens. That was the population of the United States. We had 6 million Jews in the United States. We've got 330 million citizens now, and we still got 6 million Jews in the United States. And see what happened there. We're a third of percentage-wise of what we were 80 years ago. That has become a problem. The fact also, too, is that the American Jew is vanishing. I mean, you know, the deal is the median age of a Jew right now is 44 years. We're an aging population. But that's true in most of Western Europe, too. And demographics are destiny. You know, that bodes bad for the future. I mean, the United States the Jew has never had it even in their loftiest times like it is in the United States today. I mean, this is it. But the problem is are we going to keep it that way? That's the thing. Anything else?
I was going to jump in a little bit, guys, so you understand what's happening. When during the war, you know what was happening. You know, when in Europe, you know, Russian and Ukrainian and Polish Jews, you know, they were trying to get help. They wanted Europe and the United States to help to fight against Hitler. Okay, so they were waiting until the United States jumps in. But it happened only when most Jews were killed. You know, in concentration camps, in the ghettos. So that's why it was very important for, like, my great-grandparents or everybody who lived there to see that Russia and other countries get help from the United States. And unfortunately, we got help very, very late. Okay, that's why it's a very sad story. So you started talking about anti-Semitism when you were growing up.
Oh,
You were
yeah.
on the south side.
Yeah,
Can you
sure.
talk a bit more about
Sure. You don't forget, Hitler wasn't an isolated situation. I mean, you know, Germany was pretty powerful right there, and everybody loves a winner. And in 1940, 42, he looked like the winner, and it didn't get easy. It didn't get easy. I've heard it, you know, this is a Jewish war and that sort of thing. I heard that right there, and the invectives that I won't use here, you know, about the deal right there. But we didn't take it lying down. The first generation that was born here. You learned to fight. That was the thing.
But what about when you were growing up? You told me when you lived in south side, it
Okay.
wasn't very easy. You have
Well, I was bar mitzvahed at the old Rosh Shul, or down where Shapiro's is. There was 5 synagogues right there. And I was bar mitzvahed in December of '39, right after the war started, and they were getting rumblings of what Germany was going to do to the Poles. Nobody believed it. Nobody believed it. Nobody would think that what was going to happen to the Jews. Nobody could imagine it. So that wasn't a happy time, believe me.
Did you have any relatives
Oh, yeah.
that
Ones
lived
that
in
didn't
during
come
that?
here that were caught in Poland, oh, yeah. Never heard from them again. Most of them on my father's side. On my mother's side, they were smart enough to get out.
and your father's side was from where?
Ashkelenki in Poland. They didn't get out. Nor did they want out. That was the thing, you know, from the old Orthodox situation. They called it the United States was straight, and it wasn't Jewish enough. You know.
Did you hear that, guys? It's very interesting. Why some people didn't want to go to the United States? Because they grew up in very Orthodox communities.
Trefa Medina.
You know what Reif is?
Yeah, not kosher.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, so that's why they didn't think that the United States would support as much Orthodox Judaism as it was at that time in Europe.
Poland especially.
But I was just wondering if families talked about it. When you were growing up,
Tried
did your
to, they
family
worried
talk
it.
about?
They didn't hear about it. They just from the newspapers is all. They knew, you know, instinctively they knew what was going on. That was most families there. No, nobody, if you had Roland, you were from Eastern Europe, you had relatives there. It was a miracle that they could survive it.
But did your family talk about it? What was happening to the
Oh,
relatives?
sure. That was a conversation in the Jewish community. How could it not? You know, they raised funds, they had inklings, but they couldn't believe it. It was so monumental, grotesque that Germany had culture, you know, the country of Beethoven, Schiller, Goethe. I mean, this is it. How could those people do that? That's the deal. Nobody could believe it, you know.
Say that?
Yes.
When you were a kid, like, how old were you when the talk started happening? Like, what did you feel then?
What's that?
How old were you when that happened?
Well, it started when Hitler came to power. It was in 1933. So I was 6 or 7 years old right there. And, I couldn't realize it. You don't have reason at that particular age. You can't believe that. But that was the thing.
Like, when you were 11, like my age, did you start to realize what happened?
Oh, sure. Sure, you were realizing it right there. That was a conversation.
What did you feel like? Were you
No, you're a child. No, you can't feel that right there.
Do you recall of any like demonstration in the city that
Oh,
against?
No, no, that didn't happen. They were afraid of their position. Like I told you, that it's still all right, don't rock the boat.
Okay, but it's Jews, but what about non-Jews?
Oh,
Did
no.
they want to say anything?
No.
Basically nobody
There were a
in
few
the
of
world.
them right there, but no, the mass of the population, absolutely not. No, not like now.
Is it because they didn't know?
I think they knew.
They didn't have internet or TV,
Yeah.
just newspapers?
It was somebody else's problem.
That's the problem.
See, that's the thing. No, that's a terrific thing for the United States today, that they see that moral responsibility. But then, no demonstrations, nothing like that. Didn't even occur to them. Well,
Can you tell a little bit about what happened with you after war? A little bit in
after
brief?
the war, you know, everybody, the big thing was Israel. When Israel came into being in 1948, whole situation changed. There were demonstrations for Israel in the American community because the fundamentalists thought it was prophecy, you know, that the Jews are coming back to there. They thought of the second coming. And they turned out to be the biggest allies that the Jews have. It's the Protestant fundamentalists. I mean, today, they're Israel's biggest ally right now. So that's about it. It's been a sea change. There's no question about it. It's been a sea change. Sometimes I think I'm living on another planet from what I grew up with. The society has changed so much, the issues and all. And I'll tell you something, it's a mixed blessing, some of it for the best and some of it for the worst, believe me. I mean, there's much less racism here. No, you have a black president and all, that was unthinkable then. And the racism is eroding, it's still there. I mean, you know, I'm not saying it, but it's been such a gigantic change. That's the positive aspects of it. The negatives I won't go into.
What would you do when you were in Italy?
What's that?
What would you do when you were in Italy?
What did I do? Stayed alive. That's what I did. No, I was on an LST and I stayed with the ship. The ship was in very little combat, a little bit, but that's why I joined the Navy.
What did Uncle Bob do?
Uncle Bob was an infantryman, was wounded 3 times right there.
How did that, like, was he?
What? He was wounded. He was foot soldier. There are 3 Purple Hearts there. Uncle Albert did, that's my oldest brother, since passed away, did the most of the fighting of anybody. He was in Patton's army. He was telling stories about the assault on the Siegfried line. I don't know if you remember that one. That was the extension of the, well, I don't want to go into those war stories. It's you can see it in your history book. But he was in Patton's army. Anything else, kids? Oh, go ahead.
Did you help save any Jews?
I'm sorry?
Did you help save any Jews in like Italy?
I was in no
Did
position.
you help save?
I was in no position to.
Ah,
I was on the ship. You were isolated. You had your duties, and that's it. I couldn't do that. I mean, not while you're in the service. You did what you were told.
Did Uncle Bob or did Uncle Albert ever like see anything like natural concentration camp?
Uncle Albert did. Uncle Albert did, yeah. I didn't see it. I guarded a few German prisoners when he captured them.
So what did Uncle Albert tell you? Anything?
Well, he says that it was ghastly. I don't know which camp he liberated right there, but there was one in Czechoslovakia that he was in. He brought food to him and all, that sort of thing. But I'm not sure of what he did. You know, I know about the fighting, but that's about it. You see, how can I say it? What more could you do if you were in the service? It was a disciplined outfit.
What did Uncle Bob say like about his experience? Like how did you feel about it?
How do you feel about it? You feel like you were on borrowed time, that you asked a question like that. Do you know how long the life expectancy of a soldier in the infantry in Italy was? How long do you think they had a life expectancy of? 7 days. 7 days was the life expectancy of an infantry soldier in Italy. That's how bad it was.
Sam?
Well, so did they, when you were in the Navy, did they feed you a lot?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I saw that I was eating. That's why I worked in the galley. I could eat any time I wanted to. You know, I mean, you go in there and get what I wanted. No, that was the advantage of it. No, the food was good. I'll tell you what else was good. The medical care. The medical care was good. I'll give you an interesting story. We were around the British Army in Italy. They had the British 8th Army there. And you could see what kind of a country you lived in by looking at the British draftee. Teeth were horrible. You could go blind in the British Army in that day before they give you glasses. You needed glasses in the American Armed Forces. Each army had their own opticians, their own lens grinders and all. You had medical care, you were wounded, you got the best that was available at that time of any army in the world. No question about it. The food, other than being in the field, was good. It was good. There was meat, of course a lot of pork and chicken and stuff like that, but there were canned vegetables, but there was food. There was food and as much of it that you wanted. The only thing, if you were in the field,
You were allowed to use as much as you want?
I didn't hear you, son.
You were allowed to eat as much as you want?
You're allowed to eat as much as you want?
As much as you wanted. But as good as that food was, you didn't want to eat much.
Could you eat it any time of day?
What?
Any time of day? That you ordered?
Well, you're talking about Italy. Italy was starving. There was no food, no clothing. People lived in caves. No fuel. The misery of the people was unbelievable. You You don't wanna see a war fought in your country, believe me. All you had to do was look at that thing and live through that thing. That's the worst. What do you need, son?
Did you ever smoke?
No. No, that was a miracle that I got out of the Navy. I took a few puffs of cigarettes there, but the last cigarette I had was in 1947.
Why?
Huh?
Why did you smoke?
Why?
Yeah.
One of them made me sick, and I gave it up. And I didn't start as a kid. You know why? A pack of cigarettes cost 15 cents, and I could buy an ice cream for $0.10.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, was the army, like, at your time, just, like, the majority was, like, Jews, or
No.
or was the
Jews were
majority
definitely
American?
a minority right there. Let me tell you about the American Armed Forces right there. We went in 1941, December the 7th, 1941. We had the worst army in the world, worst armed forces. Terrible, horribly led, nothing, weren't trained or anything like that. By VJ Day, we had the best armed forces in the world. We'd beaten the best. That was it. They learned how to fight a war. But when we went in, the worst army, terrible, terribly led. You see, we went up against Germany. Germany had a 500-year history of militarism. You know, Hitler conquered those countries. It wasn't an accident that he had the best army. You know what? We beat him. We beat him. And that's the answer. So, there you go. Of course, the Russians' sacrifice was incredible. Absolutely incredible. France collapsed in 6 weeks. You know, they didn't take the casualties. I read somewhere that Russia had 27 million of their citizens and armed forces destroyed in World War II. 27 million. The Western liberal democracies couldn't take casualties like that. They wouldn't do it. They would have been beat. But the Russians did it because Stalin was a monster, and it took a monster to beat a monster. You know, I mean, it still amazes me how that happened. So, that's it.
Yeah.
Anything else?